For the past few months, I've been forced to build and paint my absolute least favorite Warhammer army. And it's really not going my way at the moment. But why? Why would I ever agree to do something like this? Well, a few weeks ago, I got a strange phone call.
Hello? And the dude was like, yo, Nick, I challenge you to an epic Warhammer Spearhead challenge. And I was like, who are you? And he said, I'm Beecher from This Many Sucks. That doesn't matter right now. I'm here to take you down. Now, I wasn't about to take that kind of noise. Bet. But let's make this interesting. I pick your army, you pick mine. Sick. Let's make it even crazier. How about a twist of chaos halfway through to mess with each other's plans? That's fine, but I ain't trusting the judging to know internet randos. We'll get a panel of celebrity judges to decide the winner. Blind. They won't even know whose army is whose. Deal. Let's raise the stakes. Loser does a blind teleprompter read? No holds barred.
Oh, it's on like Donkey Kong now.
Alright, talk to you later. Smooches.
Now, picking an army out for Beecher was honestly pretty easy. I wanted him to be out of his comfort zone. See, he usually paints kind of easy models like Tomb Kings and Space Marines. Let's see how he handles a real challenge. Cities of Sigmar. Unlike what he's done in the past, these minis are chock full of details. A plethora of textures just waiting for him to mess up. So I got that box ordered and I waited for him to ship me my box as well.
Ooh. Flesh Eater. I was not expecting that one.
That's why I picked it. Because I thought it was the one you would not have like a direction to go with as quickly in. Like it seems like it seems like I was trying to throw you for a loop with that one a little bit.
Yeah, no kidding. That is definitely throwing me through a loop.
Flesh Eater Courts? I despise Flesh Eater Courts. It is literally my least favorite army in Age of Sigmar, maybe even in Warhammer as a whole. And I know what you're thinking, Nick, don't you hate elves and dwarves the most? On principle, yes, but unfortunately, in practice, no. At least the elves in Age of Sigmar have either giant cow monsters or ride around on eels, and that's pretty cool. And the diaper boys, I mean, have you seen Magma Droths? Those things are baller. They look sick. But FEC, there's just nothing here for me. The models are all really samey. They tend to be really muddy looking on the table. And right now they just aren't very good at the game. I think they have about a 40% win rate. As I built this spearhead over the course of the week, I did get some ideas on how I wanted to paint them and how I think I can beat Beecher.
Alright, so I just finished building these guys, and I have some ideas. One of the reasons I've never gravitated towards this army before is that it always ends up looking really muddy on the table, and I think I know why. They're the perfect canvas for like a nice grimdark style. The problem with the grimdark style is that from the tabletop, it looks so dark and grungy that it all just kind of meshes together. And I think that shows through on a lot of the armies I have seen painted that way. They might be beautiful, but if you're playing on the table, it's just hard to see it. So no matter what I end up doing, they're definitely going to have some sort of bright poppy color to kind of pull themselves away from just being some weird zombies in mud. I think I have a couple ways to do that. One would be to go very, very bright on the skin, and that way we can get some nice contrast between like the skin and any sort of dirt and grime we end up putting on top of it. It's a possibility, but oh, I just got a message from This Many Sucks. I think we're about to find out what my twist is.
Wait, before I show you what twist Beecher gave me, let's go over what the twists could be. It could be Nurgle, where you have to make your army all nasty and gross with guts and rusty, crusty weathering. Or possibly the Mark of Slanesh, tempting you into spending way too much time on this project in the form of non-metallic metal or object source lighting. Or it could be the Trickster God Tzeentch, behooving you to use a random paint color across your force. Lastly, it may be Khorne, demanding you to cover your models with more sinew, blood, and gore than you may be comfortable with. Alright, Beecher, bring it on.
Are you ready for your twist, Nick?
I don't know.
Have you been dreading this moment all week?
Yeah.
Well, the wait's up anyway. You know the terms. You know what each god represents. Time to choose. Pick a card.
Center right.
No. Not that one.
Center left?
Are you sure?
Yes.
Tzeentch. The Lord of Change.
No.
Well, if you had a paint scheme in mind, that's about to change. To celebrate the blue and pink bars of Tzeentch, I want you to utilize cyan and magenta as the two primary colors across your scheme. Good luck, Nick.
Well, there goes all of my paint scheme ideas. Oh shit.
Cyan and magenta. Okay, I'm gonna have to play with these colors a bit. It's time to do some test models. And usually I go into making a test model with some sort of preconceived notion on how I want the mini to look. But Tzeentch, that bastard chicken, and Beecher have ripped that away from me. I had no idea where to go when I started with these. The first test model I made was mostly cyan with some magenta claws, but those ended up being too close to Steve Herner's amazing Flesh Eater quartz. And he's a judge for this, so that kind of look is, I just don't want to go that route. I feel like I'm copying him, you know? The second model was mostly magenta, sponged up to a nice fleshy color. I like this a bit more, especially the sponge texture, but I feel like it felt a little too flat for me. Something just felt missing. Tzeentch's claws dug deep in my mind as I racked my brain for answers. One night as I was pondering the color scheme, I had to print out an endless spell cheat sheet for an upcoming Age of Sigmar League game, when I was greeted with a peculiar message. Low printer ink. The cyan tank was full, the magenta present and accounted for, but the yellow was empty. And so I found my why. And I don't mean why, I literally mean why, as in yellow, like CMYK. I whipped together a third test model using the full gamut of CMY, and finally had a plan for this army. Let's get cracking. I want this to be as poppy and saturated as possible, and to avoid it looking muddy, so I'm going to use single pigment paints as much as I can. The one downside of this approach is there aren't a lot of mini paints that I know for certain are single pigments. So I'm going to have to mix together some pure pigment paint potions, starting with magenta. For this I use some magenta from Chimera, which uses pigment PR122 or quinacridone magenta. This paint has the pigment I want, but not the physical properties, so I'm adding a good amount of contrast medium to help with the application. Just like a speed paint now, this paint turns everything into a super saturated magenta and darkens down the recesses. I spread this potion liberally onto the ghouls everywhere but the bases and selectively groomed back hairs. I also avoided the bat mounts until I whipped up a second paint potion. Now cyan as a color is a little tricky. There aren't many good options for mini paints, so instead I got a tube of artist grade PB15.3 acrylic, or phthalo blue green shade, which is the closest pigment I could find to process cyan, which is actually a dye that's used for printing. They don't really use pigments for that. This potion was also made with a bit of contrast medium to make it a little more loosey-goosey, and was applied all over these models, hitting everywhere that the magenta hadn't touched. From here I added a bit of white to both the magenta and cyan paints and started to sponge on highlights, adding in more and more white as I went. One thing that I love about the sponge technique is this subtle texture on the models. It's fantastic for skin, giving it a nice inferred, pebbly, and perfect complexion. The intention with this approach is to give myself two different underpaintings to work with. My hope is that the ghouls will feel very warm in temperature, contrasting them from the bases and the world that they are inhabiting. Speaking of their world, let me show you how I made these bases. For these bricky brats, I mixed up some green stuff and smushed it on the bases. Then went in with a texture roller lubed up with some water to prevent stickage. This was pressed and rolled slowly but firmly, which resulted in some wonderful brick textures. Then I used some muddy texture paste to create a ground texture around the bricks, showing what the scenery looks like around the road I had just created. And I'll link to all the different things I've used in this whole project down in the description below, by the way. Amazon affiliate links, you don't pay more, I get a small commission, you know the drill. If I miss anything, let me know, I'll get back to you with a link. And I have one more thing to add to these bases that I'm super stoked to try out, but that's gonna have to wait till the end. Let's get back to painting. With the underpainting done, it's time to add in the next primary color we have, sweet, sweet yellow. And oh boy, was applying this over the magenta underpainting insanely satisfying. Just look at this. The parts of the model that were sponged the brightest turn a super bright poppy yellow, which falls off gradually into a sweet saturated orange in the recesses. We'll crank the look of this yellow up to 11 in a little bit. Let's quickly take care of some details. And it was around this part of the project where I started to have a bit of a change of heart with the flesh eater quartz. Spending this much time with them, I started to really appreciate their sculpts in a way that I just never had been able to do so before. I no longer saw them as just mindless zombies or as a muddy warband devoid of character. No, the ways these ghouls decorated themselves with the bones and skin of their fallen enemies had patterns to them, an actual arrangement. The more I worked on them, the more regal they felt, and the more attached I became to them. They were no longer a pain to paint and labor over, they were becoming a joy to detail and take pride in. With all the details now completed, I wanted to do an overall wash to unify things. Now I could have used black, brown, or even sepia for the wash, but I was afraid that it would muddy down the colors too much. I wanted the yellow and cyan to sing, and I needed to bring back some magenta or I'd be tempting the fate of Tzeentch, so I mixed up a nice, not too thin magenta oil wash and basted the FEC all over with this ruby concoction. And I really mean all over. The ghouls, the bats, the bricks, and the rest of the bases, everywhere got covered in this wash. And this, dear viewers, is where disaster truly struck. I took these models outside to dry overnight, and then life happened. And I couldn't get to them the next day to remove the oil wash. And then life happened some more. And then some more. And suddenly it was over a week later and I still hadn't removed the oil paints from these models. Thanks, Tzeentch. Finally, about 9 days after, god damn it, I just realized that 9 is Tzeentch's number. I mean, this is what I get for trying to add another color to the paint scheme. Yeah, I deserve this. Finally, 9 days after applying the paint, I was able to get back to work. At this point, the magenta wash was basically fully cured. Usually with oil washes, if you get in there after a night, maybe even 2, you can remove the excess no problem. These flesh eater cord models were well past that point though, and I had to soak them in mineral spirits and scrub them with enough force that I was honestly scared I was going to start removing the previous layers of paints. I was in disarray. Normally with this big of a mess, I would just start the whole project over, but I just didn't have time for that. And to be frank, I started to become really proud of how these were turning out. So I had to lock myself in and force myself to clean up and finish this warband in time. It took longer than expected, but after 4 grueling nights scrubbing magenta paint off of these models, I finally had the last one cleaned, but I still had a problem. Now, under my bright studio lights, these do look pretty cool, but on a regular gaming table, they're just not bright enough. Like that yellow is really poppy, it's really cool, but I think it lost something in the oil wash and we need to bring that really bright saturation back into it, because right now they're just kind of muddy, and again I want to avoid the muddy look for these. Looks like we're gonna have to go through and basically re-highlight everything again. We're so close, so close. I start off with the yellow. With not much more time in the challenge, I needed to make the most impact I could quickly. So for this round of yellow, I went with the bismuth yellow I tried before, leaning into its higher opacity and highlighting around the model, but letting the nice saturated red shadows in the recesses remain. Then I brought out an off-white for the final fleshy highlights. I used this sparingly, focusing on the very center of the previous highlights and only placing these last punches of light on the top half of the models, in an attempt to guide the eyes towards the important bits. With the yellow done, I moved on to the next most important part of the models and my wife's second least favorite part of my physique, back hairs. I mixed the cyan paint in with some white to increase the opacity and brightness, then did an overbrush onto the ghoul's unfortunate fibers. Finishing these models was more of a practice of restraint than I had ever experienced before. The different processes used throughout the models showed clearly on areas like the big bat skin and lived in the rocks, rubble, and bricks on the bases. Everywhere around the models there are pops of unintentional blues and cyans, streaks of magentas and pinks that my logical brain wants to knock down and conquer to make consistent and orderly. Rocks should be gray, bat fur a consistent brown, bones should be pure ivory. The organ between my ears kept screaming at me, but the one deeper within me kept the monkey brain at bay with a steady beat, and I let the colors breathe, only adjusting for contrast and luminosity as needed. Throughout the whole process, color has been my goal, the end-all be-all. So who would I be now to quash the original objective just because some of it was coming through unplanned? That was fucking heady as shit, Nick. I don't know. Let me know if you guys like that in the comments. I am unsure of myself. Next step was to finish the bases off with a nice mix of tufty poos, little rocky things, and fake grass from huge miniatures. This is the basing thing that I really wanted to try from earlier, by the way. I've had this stuff for at least a year, and I'm so stoked to finally have a chance to use it. Then I hit the bases with a nice rim of Payne's Gray before taking some footage for the judges to review. And here, let me show you first. So I just sent off the footage to be reviewed by the judges, and also sent it to Beecher, of course, to take a look. And I quickly wanted to mention a really great army carrying case that I've been using recently. It's from a company called Famard. And they even have this cool like backpack enclosure for it now with space for your books, dice, snacks, whatnot. Full disclosure, they're not sponsoring this video. No money has changed hands, but they did send this over to me for free to take a look at. And I think it's great. If you're looking for an army transport case, this is a good option. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Affiliate link, you know the drill. Okay, I just got the final footage from Beecher. Let's see how his army turned out. Fuck, those look awesome. Well, I'm worried. They look really good. Let's see what the judges have to say, though. And a quick note, we sent these armies to the judges to review blind. They have no idea whose army is whose, and we just asked them to let us know which army they thought was cooler. Not much of a rubric here, just kind of straight vibes. First off, Beecher and I have a quick call with Steve Hermer, the mastermind behind the Holy events. Let's see how that goes first.
I've actually, after watching it again, I've actually changed my mind. The city's army, really cool. I like kind of reminded me a little bit of Black Templars. I also thought maybe the painter was going for something unusual with the eyes, maybe an undead kind of thing or something. I don't know. It just seemed that way to me. I play Flesh Eater Courts. I've seen a lot of Flesh Eater Courts armies. I recently painted Flesh Eater Courts. It's an unusual approach for the color scheme. My first reaction to it was like, nah, that's just not it. Just doesn't go. Wasn't digging on it. But seeing it again, yeah, I've changed my mind. I'm going to vote for the Flesh Eater Courts. I thought it was a fresh approach. It caught my eye this time more than the cities.
Oh shit. Steve picked my army, but it was close. Sounded like he almost went for Beecher's. Next up is the one and only scratch bashing Lord and creator of Orktober. Let's see what he has to say.
Yes, logically I, scratch bashing, of all people, would be chosen to judge a painting challenge. Alright, let's see the entries on my fake video phone. Boop. Whoa, instantly with the painted volumetric smoke fog effect. Wait, that's just real smoke. Okay. Clean, unified. We got this guy. And I think I see some vertex geese on that bronze armor. Got a good distinction between the mounted units and the more rough and tumble, like infantry dudes. This is double blind judging. I don't even know what game this is for. Is that freehand? Oh, if that's freehand, that's awesome. Hey, another entry. Oh, I guess that makes sense to have more than one participant in a challenge. And it's just feet. Ooh, my only weakness. Oh, there's the rest of them. Sweet contrast on this yellow gargoyle dog with the blue hair. Look at those highlights. Got that funky trumpet player, and whoa, is that Celebrimbor? Loving the quality of this red-yellow flesh. It's rendered so nicely. And the alternate scheme with the gray-blue skin, pretty tasty. Are those flesh shields? Oh, that rules. But then we got this, freehand. Well, unless it's just a transfer. If it's a transfer, then really, that's cheating. But I guess cheating has been kind of getting a bad rap lately, and it could really use the W.
Winner, Gagnon.
Oh, geez. We're 1-1 right now. It's all going to come down to the last judge, which is some guy named Scott.
And it has come to this. I, Miniac, the final arbiter of these hobbyists' fate. Let us begin. All right, we're going to start with the Flesh Eater Courts because vampires are cooler. Admittedly, at this point, I don't know what the other army is. Ooh, Orange Bat Boy. There's so many colors in the stone. And like also the skin of the non-orange bats and the fur is like magenta and purple and turquoise and brighter light blue colors as well. So many colors are being used in this scheme, but they're being used in such a controlled and thoughtful way that it really comes together. All right, Age of Sigmar and the Smoke Machine. All right, that gets some bonus points. Love black, red, and white. That just always works together. Dang, these pilgrims have seen better times for sure. This is a very different scheme. Very grim and dark. I love the bib on that guy. All right, I've determined it. Both really great armies. Very difficult to compare these two different approaches to miniature painting, but my personal favorite are the Flesh Eater Courts. The vampire bias is real.
Oh my god, I won. Oh man, I can't believe it. Beecher's models look so good, so damn good. And I'm honestly surprised that I pulled this one off. And it sounds like if Steve hadn't rewatched those videos again during our call, he would have given this away to This Many Sucks. Man, what a challenge. All right, Beecher, it's time for your punishment. Remember, no holds barred. What I sent to you, you have to go with. Are you ready?
All right. I'm ready.
All right. Huge thank you to the judges for helping make this challenge a reality and to my patrons for making these videos possible. Take it away, Beecher.
Somebody once told me, world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Oh, right. All right. So YouTube isn't going to let me use this song and keep this video monetized, which, listen, I'm saving up for a house right now. I need to keep this video monetized. But I've made an unlisted, unmonetized video with that glorious song, and it is hidden in the description of Beecher's video. Go watch Beecher's, then go watch the punishment video. I put way too much time into editing it. I love Shrek. Thanks for doing this with me, Beecher. You're a good sport. All right. Take care, everyone.